Hey guys, Brian here, aka Some Dude from KydexPro.com. Here to post a video about how I go about cutting the sweat shields on the inside the waistband holsters that I make. When I first started out making holsters quite a few months ago, this is one of the things I found hardest to come across information or video tutorials on how guys go about doing it. So now that I think I've got a decent process down, I'm going to kind of post what I do. As you can see on my holsters, I like to cut my sweat shield with a little bit of a sweep here. I like the way it looks, and it also works out, as you'll see a little bit later, for finishing that edge on my belt sander that I have. So there's another one that I've done here for Glock 26-27, and then also a Smith & Wesson shield here. So all of them have that little bit of a sweep to them. The first thing I do is I start out by marking my holster. I'm going to assume everybody kind of knows how to get their holster to this shape here. It seems like most of the questions come from what to do after this point. So what I do is I've got one of these, I don't know what exactly they call it, outline transfer or something like that. But it comes in very handy for doing your Kydex stuff. What I like to do is, like I said, I cut it just above that line. Get it going here. So I mark all my cuts first. I find that's the best way for me to do it, to make sure I'm cutting somewhere where I want to be. This red pencil shows up a little bit better on the black Kydex, but this is all I got right now. So I usually mark that first line across, and then, as you can see on the top here, this is where I mark my next cut. So what I'll do is I'll usually start right about here, and it doesn't have to be perfect because you will, finish and cut this, but just try to make a sweeping motion here, kind of connect those two, and that's pretty much marking it up. From here, I will go over to the bandsaw. Okay, guys, as you can see, I'm over here at the bandsaw. I was lucky enough to have quite a few woodworking tools left over from when I was doing woodworking, and so I use a bandsaw for all of my cuts on my inside the waistband holsters. I've seen some videos with people using scroll saws to cut sweat shields in. I would imagine those would be fine. Same general concept here. And I'm going to make mine in two separate cuts. As you can see, or maybe you can't see, my mark is going to be right here. What I've learned with this cut is when you make that cut, you want to make it at a 90-degree angle to the piece of Kydex that you're cutting. If you're not at a 90-degree angle, your edge is going to be inconsistent width, and it just doesn't quite look right. So, that's one of the tips that I've learned from cutting these, is make sure your Kydex right here is at a 90-degree angle to your blade. Also, the other thing I've learned from cutting Kydex on the bandsaw is, as the piece passes through the blade, you want to get good pressure on the outside of the Kydex as it passes through. If you just kind of let it flop out there, it's going to get some chatter and possibly mess up your cut. You don't want to pinch the blade as it goes through, but as you'll see, kind of once that cut starts to go, I will kind of put some pressure on the outside. This is going to be made in two cuts. I'm going to crank on the bandsaw now, and excuse the noise here. Okay, so as you can see, I've got a first cut here. It looks a little bit rough, but that will be cleaned up on the belt sander here in a little bit. I'll try to blend that cut as best as I can into my line coming across here. But after that first cut, this is kind of what you're left with. Usually it's not that bad. Try not to bump the camera here while I was cutting that. So for my second cut, I'm going to move around to the outfeed side of the bandsaw. Okay guys, I'm actually sitting on the outfeed side of my bandsaw where I'm going to make that last cut here. Tip for making this cut here is you want to make sure to kind of start at the end, the bottom. You want to kind of roll into the cut. If you come at it straight, all those teeth are going to grab at once and pull your piece of Kydex down. Another reason why you want to roll into the cut, I guess if you can imagine here, 90 degrees as we're coming in. If you're not careful and you don't roll it, you're gonna hit this back piece down here, which I've done once or twice. But as you're going to come in, start it, roll, and finish. Now, if your cut's not perfect, that's okay. As you come in here, you can actually kind of, twist it and blend into that cut a little bit better. So I'm going to pop on the bandsaw here and make the cut. And there we go for our cut on this. Still actually pretty ugly, but that'll get cleaned up over at the belt sander there. Head over there and show you how I do that. Okay guys, I'm over here at the benchtop belt sander where I'm going to clean up my cuts here. Reason why I have that sweep into them is, if you can see, that fits real nicely right onto the radius of the belt sander here. Allows me to clean it up pretty good and make it look all nice and clean.